In this video, we will show you how to simulate restriction cloning on Mendelgen. Restriction cloning is a common cloning technique that uses restriction enzymes to prepare both a vector and an insert for ligation. We will simulate inserting a single fragment into a plasmid vector. So, to start the restriction cloning simulation, we need to choose the backbone that we'd like to use. I would like to use the PGL4 plasmid. So I'll click on the PGL4 plasmid and go to the Mendelgen editor. In the editor, the PGL4 plasmid is shown on the left as a circular map and on the right in a sequence map. I've decided to use the PGL4 plasmid because it has the multiple cloning site right here shown in the blue arrow. Just downstream from the multiple cloning site is also a luciferase reporter. To begin the restriction cloning simulation, I'll go up to the cloning icon and click on it. This will show a drop-down listing all of the cloning techniques that Mendelgen supports. I will click on the restriction cloning. This opens a cloning tab to the right that will clearly outline all the steps that need to be completed in order to perform the restriction cloning simulation. The first step has already been finished because our vector backbone will be the vector that is shown in the viewer. Next, we need to specify our insert of interest. This can be done in two ways. You can either select a preloaded vector under From My Library, or you can manually enter a new vector under From Clipboard. In this example, I would like to use a preloaded vector under From My Library. However, I will quickly show you how to manually enter a new vector. So first, click From Clipboard, and then enter the sequence name. I will just use test here. And then under, you need to enter the DNA sequence. I will simply write ACTG here. And then all you have to do is click Add Sequence. This will then show you the sequence name under Insert Sequence. As I said earlier, I would like to use a preloaded vector for my insert of interest. So I will click on the X, removing this vector. Then I will click on From My Library to move over to the other tab. Under From My Library, we can click on the drop-down to show us a list of all the vectors that we have previously uploaded. I would like to use the CMV enhancer promoter for my insert of interest. So I'll click on this vector, which will then be moved below insert sequence. The CMV enhancer promoter is highlighted in blue. This lets us know that if we click on it, it will open a new tab showing the CMV enhancer promoter. I'm going to go ahead and click on it and let you know why I chose this vector as my insert. Our aim in this restriction cloning simulation is to get the region containing the CMV enhancer and CMV promoter to be inserted within the multiple cloning site on the PGL4 vector. Now, in order for restriction cloning to be successful, the backbone and insert vectors must contain compatible restriction sites. Now, identifying a restriction site in Mendelgen is very easy because they are highlighted in red, as shown below. Now, so we have to identify restriction sites before and after the CMV enhancer promoter. So what I see here is the KPN1 restriction site comes before, and the XHO1 restriction site comes after. So now let's switch over to the PGL4 plasmid and check that the KPN1 restriction site and XHO1 restriction site exists within the multiple cloning site. Now here, if we look in the multiple cloning site, we see that there is the restriction site for KPN1, and here's a restriction site for XHO1. Now that we have ensured that the PGL4 vector and CMV enhancer promoter insert have compatible restriction sites, we can move on to the final step. So let's click on the cloning tab, so we'll go back over there. We'll see in the final step, we just have to select the enzymes that we've already identified. So click on the drop-down, and we'll see the list of all the enzymes that are performing cuts within the backbone and the insert, but as we've just said, we want to select KPN1 and XHO1. Now, after we've selected these, they're shown in the drop-down, and we see that on the left, it says one cut. This is showing us that on the backbone, it only cuts once. And then on the right, it says one cut as well. This shows us that on the insert, it also is only cutting once. We see this for both of the enzymes so that we get just an extra reassurance that each enzyme is only cutting the backbone ones and the insert ones. So then now we can go ahead and click clone. So now the restriction cloning simulation has taken place in the back end, and we can see the result is shown in the viewer on the left. When we look over here to just double check everything worked out, we see first the blue arrow right here is showing us the entire restriction cloning insert, and then within that we see the CMV enhancer and the CMV promoter, which are now upstream of the luciferase reporter. Great, so that concludes this tutorial on simulating restriction cloning. Check out our other videos to see tutorials on how to simulate other cloning techniques within Mendelgen.